In this video, we'll talk about changing scenes with GroKit Core. In order to easily change scenes whenever our mechanics require it, we will simply use the Scene Loader component within GroKit Core. Let's start by creating an empty game object, calling it Scene Manager, and adding the Scene Loader component. Looking at the Scene Loader component, we can see one main parameter to fill out, the GoTo scene. This field is looking for the name of the scene we want to change to when we call the appropriate function. In this example, the name of the scene is Test Scene 1. Make note, the scene needs to be present in your build settings in order to work correctly as shown here. Remember, you can simply drag and drop your scene file into this list. Once we have our scene loader set up, all that's left to do is test it. For this example, we will test it using a trigger event. Let's go over to our GroBlock menu and add both an item ID trigger and a debug grab item with ID. Our debug object has an item ID script with an item ID field set to any, and our item ID trigger object also has an accepted item ID of any. This means that when our debug object comes into contact with our item ID trigger, it will cause the event to fire. As we saw in our triggers tutorial, the item ID trigger will call the on and off events of the parent's outward activator. With that in mind, we can create an event in our outward activators on event that will call our scene loader function to change scenes. We'll drag our scene manager object in and set the function on scene loader to go to scene. Now let's test it out. Once our debug cube touches our trigger, the outward activators on event should trigger, and our scene loader will be told to go to the scene which we provided, Test Scene 1. And there we go. We can also directly load scenes in the function call on the on event if we wanted to use something like the scene index instead. In this case, because our Test Scene 1 is at index 0 in our build settings, this functionality should work exactly the same. We'll test it now. And there we go. That's all for loading a new scene with GroKit Core. Check out the rest of the GroKit Core tutorials to learn more.